So before I go any further, I'd just like to start today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm situated here today in Melbourne. And as we've got people joining us from many different locations, including New Zealand, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of those lands too. And also I'd like to pay respect to elders, past, present and emerging of the Kulin Nation, and extend that respect to other Indigenous people here today. And as we acknowledge country today, and begin this Youth Leadership Month, I'd also like to draw your attention to the leadership of Indigenous Australians over the past 60,000 years here. I recently watched an ABC documentary called In My Blood It Runs, and there's an Indigenous child called Dwan who takes on the responsibility of being a healer of his community at a really young age, younger than all of us here today, in fact. And it's a really moving and, well, for me, it was a personally confronting story. But I'd encourage everyone to check it out. It's on ABC's iView. So it's called In My Blood It Runs. And yeah, I learned a lot from it about leadership and the country that we live on. So as we all continue our leadership journey, learning as we go, it's my great pleasure to welcome Dom Price, one of the world's leading speakers on the future of work, who we're really pleased to have here today. And I'll soon pass over to my co-MC, Catherine, who will introduce Dom more formally in a moment. But firstly, welcome to all our young leaders here today. Thanks very much for joining us. Leadership is such an integral part of Canteen, as I'm sure we're all aware. And it's great to kick this Youth Leadership Month off with a session with Dom. So if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat below. We'd ask you to keep your microphone muted, just so we get that really good audio as best we can. But yeah, we'd love to hear your questions. And Dom has said any question is perfectly okay. So feel free to shoot them through the chat. If you don't want to do it publicly in the everyone chat, you can DM me privately through Simon Davie, D-A-V-I-E, in the chat that way. So it's absolutely fine if you want to send me a question that way, and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the end. So the flow of the session for today is a keynote from Dom to start with, which will take us to about 7:30. And then Catherine is going to ask a few questions with Dom as well. And then we'll have some questions from you all. So yeah, we look forward to hearing them. I'm also keen to welcome some familiar faces there from Canteen, who are also keen to come along and hear Dom, as well as our friends at Metricon, who are really huge supporters of Canteen and making a big difference to the lives of lots of young people all over Australia. So please join me in welcoming Catherine Woodward, who is going to MC this fantastic event. And many of you will already know her. She's been with Canteen for about 8 years now, since she was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. She's now cancer-free and the vice chair of the Canteen board. And for those of you that aren't aware, over half of our board here at Canteen are young people. So it's really exciting. We're really pleased to have Catherine here. She's a very impressive individual who, in addition to all her board responsibilities, is heavily involved with Canteen on a key advisory group. And she's currently in a placement in Warwick Hospital in Queensland. And you'll see behind her, she's got a simulated hospital room, which is really cool. And she's doing her Doctor of Medicine there, having recently graduated with her Bachelor of Medical Science in 2017. So please join me in welcoming my fellow MC for tonight to introduce our special keynote speaker. You can press the clap button and the reactions button below if you like. And over to you, Catherine.
Thanks, Simon. It's great to see everyone here, zooming in from across Australia and the Tasman as well. So for those of you who are wondering, yes, I am in a simulated hospital room. It's not real, as much as I like to think that it's Grey's Anatomy. It's not quite. So I'm sure that, like me, we're all very excited to hear from our keynote speaker tonight, Dom Price from Atlassian. Dom is a very impressive, has a very impressive resume. He's both the head of R&D and also the work futurist at Atlassian. And with such a unique job title, I'm really keen to hear from Dom a little bit more about what exactly his job entails. As most of you will know, Atlassian is Australia's biggest business success story of this century. The founders, Scott and Mike, created a software startup using $10,000 credit card in 2002 And since then, it's grown to thousands of employees globally, and it's worth over $40 billion, which is a number that I struggle to get my head around. Dom has been key to helping Atlassian scale up by being ruthlessly efficient and effective, and in driving a culture of openness and sharing rather than keeping their secret sauce hidden. As you'll no doubt pick up by his accent, Dom hails from England and his career has spanned the globe. He's worked in Europe, the US, and the Asia Pacific. In fact, Dom's passion for travel has seen him visit 50 countries so far, but after 17 years in Australia, he calls Australia home. We're really lucky to have him here tonight, and I know that we're in for an awesome time. So please put your virtual hands together as we welcome Dom Price to talk to us about the future of work. Welcome, Dom.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for the warm welcome, and thank you to everyone for giving up the time tonight, wherever you are in the world, to share in this conversation. It's a huge privilege for me to be able to welcome you into my lounge. If times were different, I'm sure we could all gather around an event space somewhere, share a tea, a coffee, a beer or a wine and a conversation, but it's not, right? We're in a bit of a strange world right now. So I welcome you to my lounge in Sydney, and thanks for letting us into your space and your time. There's a few sort of slides I want to share with you folks today to talk you through some of this story, which I'm really looking forward to. One thing I would say is my career does sort of start in the UK, as Catherine mentioned. You can tell by the accent. The very start of my career, though, is an interesting story in itself. I never planned to be a work futurist. I didn't study work futurism at university or at school. My parents didn't wish for me to be a work futurist. That wasn't a conversation we ever had back at home in Manchester. In fact, my parents were really keen on me becoming a chartered accountant. And hopefully by the end of these 20 minutes, you'll sit there and go, what on earth did they see that made them think he'd be a good chartered accountant? Because that was never on the cards. But the interesting part of that story was the reason my parents wanted me to become a chartered accountant was they sat me down and said, you'll have a job for life. If you become a chartered accountant, you'll have a job for life. And the reality is that was possibly true for their generation. And it could have been true for my generation, but it's certainly not true for your generation. The sheer amount of uncertainty in the world right now and the changes to roles and leaderships means that you're going to have a very different experience in your leadership journey than the people that went before you. And that can be quite daunting. But what I want to share with you today is if you get it right, I think it can be really exciting. I think you get to build your own adventure. The first thing I want to share with you, and apologies for any of the languages in here for the younger children, but these are the values of Atlassian that exist on our website. It was the thing that first appealed to me when I joined 7.5 years ago now. And the reason it kind of appealed was they make sense to me. These are values that when I look at them, I'm like, I understand that. I understand play as a team. I understand build with heart and balance. Be the change you seek is this gauntlet that we lay down to everyone to say, if you don't like the way something works, change it. Own it. Don't whinge about it. Own it. Change it. Let's drive our own evolution. Don't bleep the customer is our way of saying that without our customers, we don't exist. So we have to delight them every day. And then one of the reasons I'm happy sharing with you today, and one of the ethoses that I've taken from the world of Atlassian, is open company, no BS. We're very open with what we share. We're very open in how we approach things. And I will share things with you today that are part of the Atlassian DNA that I think if I was in any other company anywhere else in the world would be a trade secret, something that we'd hoard and keep to ourselves. I have a belief that back in the day, knowledge used to be power. And I don't think that's true anymore. For the generation that are coming through the ranks right now, knowledge isn't power. It's the application of knowledge that's power. It's what you do with it, right? It's the impact that you want to have. And so these values not only guide me in my work at Atlassian, they kind of guide me in what I do outside Atlassian as well, in how I act with my friends, society, community. And so I'm always looking for that heart and balance of saying, I don't want to work too hard and burn out, but also I want to contribute to society. And how do I get balance in my life? How do I balance friendships, community, and work? How do I balance success and financial health with mental and physical health? How do I be the change you seek? How, just those, and being English, this is really hard. Because as someone who lived in England for 25 years, I do like to just sit and whinge occasionally. normally involving cricket or sport of some kind. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to invest and waste energy whinging when I can drive and build for a better future. Now, when Simon asked me to do this and gave me the brief, I'm like, there's like a million things I wanted to talk about. I was so excited. And then he told me that I only had 20 minutes. I'm like, look, it's unrealistic for me to get a million things into 20 minutes. So I've picked the 3 most super awesome, important things that I wanted to share with you. And then in the Q&A and discussion afterwards, if there's anything else you want to discuss, I honestly encourage you, if you have a question, just ask it. There is nothing you can ask me that will offend me, but you are highly likely to ask questions I can't answer, but just be brave and ask. So the first of the 3 things, and this is something I'm very passionate about. In fact, there's a show on ABC 7:30 over the next few weeks that I'm a part of around skills. And that's because skills are fundamentally changing. This is taken from the World Economic Forum survey and study on future skills. Skills on the decline and skills on the rise. Now, in decline doesn't mean they're not important anymore. It just means we have an oversupply of them. They're getting less important. The skills on the rise is fascinating for me, because when you look at them and you take a step back, it's things like empathy, vulnerability, being your true authentic self, but having resilience and grit and determination, your ability to bounce back from adversity, your ability to be adaptive, nimble, your ability to sort of change, right, and evolve. And if I think about anyone who's going to have the experience and understanding of that, it's highly likely to have been people that have life experience. Now, I would never wish a bad life experience on anyone. But when you do have a bad life experience, you have an opportunity to go, how am I going to use this to learn? What am I going to learn from this? And how am I going to grow? How am I not just going to survive, but how am I going to thrive? And for me, whether you've suffered adversity or not, there's something wonderful about a youthful mind. We hire a lot of graduates in Atlassian, and I always enjoy it when they start, because we have this program we do called Ship It, where we get our graduates to hack at our tools and our ways of working. And they do this in their first week. And at the end of their first week, we stand them at the front of our large hall and they present back to the rest of the company the ideas they had. They get 3 minutes to do a presentation on what they tried to do. And the same thing happens every time. The old farts, that's people like me, or older than me, stand at the back of the room, normally with a beer, arms folded. And as these graduates present their ideas, they stand there and go, wow, I mean, we've tried that before. It'll never work. And then about 60 seconds in, there's normally this penny drop moment where they're like, oh, they appear to have done it, but they can't have done it properly. And then at the 3-minute mark, they're sipping their beer going, wow, they actually did it. And that's because there's something wonderful about that generation that doesn't know where the walls and where the barriers are, right? There's a beauty to not knowing. There's a beauty to the abundance mindset of going, I'll give it a try. If it works, I'll do more of it. And if it doesn't work, I'll apologize and I'll tell as many people as possible that it didn't work so that they can learn from my mistake, right? It's about learning quickly. And so what you can see in these future skills is that they are all things that I think the youth of today has in abundance, right? And it can actually add a huge amount of value to the workplace as leaders. Leadership is no longer about seniority and tenure. When I started work in the year 2000, which for me seems quite recent, but people keep on reminding me was 20 years ago, hierarchy was very strong in virtually every workplace I went to, right? It was how long you'd served. You know, promotions were based on tenure and how long you'd been in role. One of the beauties of working at Atlassian is I work with people of all ages, many of whom are younger than me, many of whom are older than me, and it doesn't matter because leadership is no longer age. Leadership is about your skills, your capability, and your mindset. So anything you can do to hone that will help you. The reason I think this will be amplified in the next 10, 15, 20 years is if you look at the rise of technology, automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, that is taking away the mundane, repeatable tasks. What it's leaving behind are uniquely human skills. Human skills that aren't just the logical part of our head, but that very important thing being our heart, how we interpret a situation, how we empathize, how we walk in someone else's shoes. The fact that when you see someone, you just get that sense that they're sad, and in a pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID world, you just gave them a hug. right? Robots aren't going to do that. And if they do, I don't think they're going to do it as well as people, because there's a certain amount of TLC that we can give each other that isn't going to be about robots. There's a certain amount of empathy and curiosity and creativity that we will always have. And so I think the future of leadership and the future of skills is about tapping into what's uniquely human, which is hard because my generation and the one before it, who grew up in the last industrial revolution, we were all about efficiency. We were all about being productive and just doing things faster. And I think we need to move to a model of just being more effective and more balanced. When I think about skills, there's 4 areas I think about for future leaders that I think are really important. One is, what are the people skills? How do you learn? How do you grow? How do you develop? What's your mindset? How do you think about the world? The second one is practices. Now, when I first joined the workforce, and maybe this is the same for Simon, who maybe a few years younger than me, it wasn't called practices, it was called process. And if you were really unlucky, it was called policy. But actually, the volatile world we live in now, it's not predictable, right? You can't write a policy that covers every situation. You can't write a process that's correct all the time. So instead, we talk about practices, which is ways of working, ways of leading, ways of communicating. We actually work on a philosophy of 80-20. Our practices are 80% baked, and the final 20% is up to you as leaders to personalize to the environment you're in. And I'm sure this is familiar with you. When someone comes to you with a 100% solution and it's a little bit jarring, it's because they've not understood your unique situation. Similarly, when someone comes to you with a blank piece of paper, that can be quite confronting. So we're like, let's bake this 80% and give people the final 20% to personalize to their environment. The future of leadership and the future for you is going to be massively impacted by both products and technology. You know, again, when I joined the workforce, technology was something that an IT department decided on and deployed to the organization. But that's become very consumerized now, partially through the wonderful mobile phone, but also through the fact that our expectations of technology have increased. We want technology to be to consumer grade. We want it to make us more effective. We expect it to be on 24/7 when we need it. We expect it to be fast. We expect an instant response. And then the final component, which when I actually sort of coined this as being the 4th area in December last year, I didn't realize how impactful it would be, but for leadership, your physical environment becomes important. You know, for basically 100 years, the physical environment for a leader was their office, all right, or their office space, and they commanded and controlled over a squadron of people in that space. You know, for 100 years, most leaders believed that line of sight equaled productivity, equaled effective team members. But thanks to this COVID experiment that we're now all forced to be a part of, we realize that place can mean many different things. And similarly, the mobile phone, again, has enabled us to work in many different places. One could say that we've not yet built the discipline of how do we manage our time and how do we manage our energy. You know, the advantage of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, was that if you worked in a factory, when you clocked out and left that factory, you didn't think about work. You didn't worry about leadership. There was no offsites or talking about motivation or understanding performance. You worked, you went home, you worked, or you went home. And actually the blurring of those lines now, as we've brought work into the home, we've not yet built the discipline. And I think for future leaders, one of the most important things is if we take away the construct of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, how do we take the advantage of flexibility to increase the diverse talent pool we can hire, to build more inclusive environments, but to do so with a discipline where we don't burn out? I don't want us to be in a future position where our financial health is great, but our mental and physical health has suffered because of it. We have to get balance between those 3. And not just balance between these 4 areas, but also congruence. As a future leader, if you've got people skills, you want your practices and ways of working to be consistent and congruent with the technology you use and the place that you have, which we all learn a lot about through COVID. The next thing I want to talk about is you, right? You as a person. I got given this exercise 2 years ago. I was in New York doing some work, and I visited someone who was mentoring me at the time. I will be honest and confess to you, we were drinking a Pinot Noir at the time, so there's a little bit of red wine to lubricate the conversation. And I was talking to this lady about some of the challenges I was having as a leader. The reason I was struggling at Atlassian, we were growing 40% year on year. And my boss had said to me, Dom, to keep your job, you have to grow by 40% year on year, just to stay in your position. I was like, no. If I stick around for a few years, you promote me, I get more senior, I earn more money. Like, we all know that's how the corporate ladder works. And he's like, no, to keep your job, you have to grow by 40%. And by the way, you can't do 40% more because you run out of time. We've all got 24 hours in a day, so that doesn't work. Thankfully, this mentor of mine gave me this exercise. Probably one of the most confronting exercises I've ever done as a leader, and one that I'm going to share with you today. And the wonderful thing is, it's free. You don't need anyone's permission to do it. And the only thing that will get in your way to doing it properly is the rational part of your brain that tends to lie to you every now and then. So the exercise is called the 4 L's. Every 90 days, I do this exercise. I reflect on the previous 90 days as myself as a leader. And what I do is I write down a little bit of a narrative. What are the key milestones? What are the things that occurred in the last 90 days? And then I ask myself these 4 questions. Question number 1, the most confronting one. What did I love? It's really awkward when someone says, what do you love about yourself? We tend to get a little bit shy and a little bit like humble and like, oh, no. So I choose the word loved on purpose, not like. Like's like nice. I don't like nice. It's not descriptive enough. What do you love about yourself as a leader? And this doesn't mean as a CEO or as a senior, it's just you as a human as you lead others. Not many people realize this, but every single one of you on this call today, regardless of your background, is a role model. Every single one of you. Because there are people in this world, in your community, in your family, in your society that look at you, admire you, and they are role modeling your behaviors. And so this exercise is saying, if I know what I love about myself and it's my superpower, I should probably do more of it. Not stand on a soapbox and beat my chest, but I should just acknowledge that I'm really good at it, share it with others, and maybe do more of it. The next 2 L's are linked together. What have I longed for? And what have I loathed? And the reason they're linked together is I believe every single leader, regardless of their position, is full. We are cognitively full. We have no capacity for more. And yet what we tend to do is we tend to try and sprinkle in new things, but we forget to sprinkle in and remove the old things. If you've ever moved house, you know you do this. When you empty wardrobes and cupboards and you're like, I don't remember buying this. I've had it for years. And you move it to the next place and you think, I'll get rid of it one day, and you never do, right? Mentally, we have to get rid of the loathed. We have to get rid of the old habits, rituals, whatever they were that weren't helping us get stronger, that weren't building new muscle for us. And it's only when we remove the loathed that we get the space, the time, and the freedom to add in the longed for. Otherwise, the longed for just sits on a post-it note somewhere. I wish I could do this. I wish and you're like, find the time. Now, the hardest thing, and this is part of my story here, the hardest things I found with the longed for is my ego. Because when I add in a longed for, I'm crap at it because I've never done it before. And as a leader, I don't like being rubbish at things. As a leader, for some reason, leaders think they need to be superheroes. I don't want to call BS on that. The best leaders I work for are the most vulnerable, honest, authentic leaders. They're the ones that can say, hey, I've acknowledged that I need to build a new muscle or a new skill. It could be how I run a meeting, how I communicate to people, how I present, it could be anything. And they're happy to say, I'm going to practice this. And the first time I do it, I'm going to be really average at it. I'm going to practice again. I'm going to get help. I'm going to get better at it until I build that muscle. Because you don't just evolve. You don't just become a better leader. You have to take the action. But to take that action, you have to give yourself the space, the time, the freedom. And the 4th L is, what have I learned? Now, essentially, once I've done this exercise, sometimes there's smiles, sometimes there's tears. Like I say, it can be quite confronting an exercise to do. But once I've done it, it's easy to keep to myself. But actually what I do is I share it. I share it with my peers, with other leaders, some in Atlassian, some in other companies, some friends from uni or college, some family. It doesn't really matter. But in sharing it, here's what happens. When I share my loved and my superpower, someone always says, I'm trying to get better at that. Can you help me? And more than often I go, yeah, of course I can. And then I talk about my longed for, and they're like, Mary in finance, she's amazing at that. You should totally speak to her. And I'm like, brilliant, because I wasn't going to learn that by myself. I can't sit in my lounge and just automatically get better at things. The loathed, what I say to people is, let's pretend that me and Simon work together. I'd say, Simon, I have this habit in meetings of talking over people, being dominant, and I loathe the fact that I do that. I want to be more inclusive in meetings. If I do that, call me out. So what I do is when I pick my loathe, I find someone who's going to hold me accountable for changing that habit. And then the learn is the gift that keeps on giving. It sets the tone to all the other leaders of going, oh, here's the thing that I did in the last 90 days that I learned. Most of mine, I say 99% of my learn are things that I got wrong, where I failed at. But here's what I learned from that experience, and I share that lesson learned. This means that I don't have to go through any kind of transformation. I get to evolve every single day and every week by experimenting on myself. And it's fun. You know, a couple of quarters ago when I first did this, I longed to do more coaching and mentoring, and I loathed the number of meetings I had in my calendar. Now, being a typical Englishman, I whinged about it for a while, and I'm like, hang on, I own my destiny. So what can I do about this? You know what? I cancelled every meeting in my calendar. It was brilliant. I sent a note to my colleagues and said, these are either boomerangs or sticks. If it's a boomerang, the meeting comes back. If it's a stick, when I throw it, it doesn't come back. About a third of the meetings came back. And when they did, I said, what are you holding me accountable for? What's my role? And what's the purpose of the meeting? I became more effective in those meetings. The 2/3 of the meetings that didn't come back, I got a huge amount of time back in my life to do way more effective things, right? Time is our most precious resource. I don't need to tell you that. So let's not allow other people to impose on our time. Let's use it and be the most effective we can. And the third thing I want to talk about is teams. You know, I work for a company. Our mission is to unleash the potential in every team. If you look at the research, teamwork, and certainly diverse teams, when they come together, the respectful dissent and the friction that they get causes way more innovation, way more creativity than working alone. Teamwork is essential. It's just really hard and quite painful occasionally. I spent most of my 7 years at Atlassian helping us be better at teamwork. When people talk about teamwork, they tend to talk about the high achievement, high performance stuff, goals, having a shared understanding, clear mission, trust, roles and responsibilities. Brilliant, easy stuff, relatively common sense. But actually, if you look at the future of leadership and you look at the future of effective teams, it's not just about high performance. There's a massive conversation in there about emotional well-being. And this doesn't need to be a taboo conversation or a new conversation. I firmly believe that in my lifetime, in fact, let's go back 50 years. If you were a leader 50 years ago and you said you were going for a run, someone would ask you what you were running from. But now gyms and exercise are normal. My hope and my belief is that mental health, wellness, physical health will have the same level of correspondence and conversation and not be a taboo anymore. Where we can talk about emotional well-being. We can talk about avoiding burnout rather than curing burnout. We can talk about the balance of work and life and the integration points, right? We can add in flexibility in work so that people with disabilities, people that aren't able to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, can enter the workforce because they've got a bloody good mind and a super powerful heart, and I can use them and utilize them way more than just getting people who can physically be located in an office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. This is about cohesion as a team, having a sense of belonging and feeling free to do the best work of your life every day, and doing so in a balance between work and society, community, and family. The way we did this at Atlassian is we decided that teamwork wasn't easy. It wasn't natural for some people. We created a whole lot of assets. I used to have a talk that sort of Catherine paid homage to, which was called The Secret Sauce of Atlassian. One of our co-CEOs, Mike Cannon-Brooks, said to me one day, Dom, why don't you just call it The Sauce and share it for free? Which I can only assume is why you get paid the big bucks. And so we did. We documented all of our ways that Atlassians all over the world work, and we shared it externally. I know schools, colleges, universities use this. I know businesses use this, government uses this, anyone can use it because teams are everywhere. The concept is dead simple. We've got a health monitor. How do you rate your health as a team? How are you working together? And we rate ourselves with thumbs, dead easy. And then we go, cool, which areas do we want to focus on? We want to get better at area X. And then we've built plays. Plays are the way that you then build muscle. When you know you struggle in an area, you do a play to build that muscle. Over time, you get better at it. You go back and do another health monitor. Really simple. Whether it be school projects, university projects, social teams, Canteen as a leadership team, yourselves as leaders, these are assets that exist free of charge for you to not only amplify how your team assesses itself, but also then how you work together. This is going to be way more important in the future of work, because the nimbleness of teams, the rate of change will increase, and your ability to bring a team together in whatever circumstance you're in is your superpower. A quick example that we've got in here, one of the things we found with our teams at Atlassian, we tended to overly focus on what we were doing, and we would forget why we're doing it. So we created something called the project poster. It says, what's the problem we're solving? What's the impact of that problem? What are the potential solutions? And what assumptions are we carrying? And every 2 weeks as a team, we come back together and we say, what's changed? We've made 2 weeks worth of progress. What's changed? Is the problem still the same? Have we learned anything about the problem? Is the impact of that problem different as we've talked to customers or users, stakeholders? Is our solution still sound, or do we need to change that? And what assumptions do we need to go and validate or test? The world that you're in as leaders is more volatile than ever before. At some point, we need to just accept that volatility and use that as our benefit to go, let's be nimble, let's be adaptive, let's be agile, right? And you as leaders have an amazing ability to do that. In addition to just how you work as a team, we recently published on this URL, atlassian.com/remote, every way we've learned to hire remote, candidate experience, how we onboard, how we work in distributed teams, everything around this weird experience we've all got of not physically being together. We've documented everything we've learned on that, and again, free of charge, open to all of you. Just get in there and use these assets. Now, I said 3 things, and I promised 3 things. I sneaked in one more because I got a little bit excited when I was doing the slides. And this is, I think, is the power that you have as leaders. I recently met Dan Pink when I was in last year in Austin at South by Southwest, and I was talking to him about collaboration. Right, I have a firm belief that the future of business, the future of teamwork, the future of leadership isn't about the ideas you have, it's about how you create a safe environment for people to share. And I was talking about how hard collaboration is, and he shared this statement with me. Argue like you're right, listen like you're wrong. And I did that middle-aged white male thing of nodding and agreeing. And then I had that confronting moment when I was like, I think I argue like I'm right and I listen like I'm right. No, I definitely do. And I know I do because when I listen to interrupt, or I listen to correct, or I listen thinking it's just a matter of time till Simon realizes I'm right and he's wrong. And none of those things are helpful. And so now I've been practicing the skill set of putting my point forward with passion and vigor and excitement. And then I shut the big thing on the front of my face and open the 2 big floppy things on the side, and I just listen. And I listen like I'm wrong. Because the more people can add to my idea, the more they can help evolve that idea with their diverse mindset, different views of the world, the better the idea becomes. And so this for future leaders is huge. You have to be able to demonstrate your passion, but also take a step back and listen. Listen not just with your ears, but with your heart, right? Accept that you might be wrong and listen to that challenge as respectful dissent. Now, I did say one more thing, but then I got really excited and I sneaked in one more thing, which is definitely the last thing. Now, this is a bit of a curveball. Now, I don't believe Simon knew this a few weeks ago when he asked me to talk, because he just asked me to talk about the future of work. And he may be confused as to why I instantly said yes, because he also knows that I often say no, because we have way more requests for help than I ever get time to deliver. So there's one more thing I want to share with you, which is my experience in 2020. 2020 has been a bit of a weird year for me. In February, I got diagnosed with bowel cancer. So I have a well-known syndrome, and I got the call after a number of tests, and they were like, great news, it's bowel cancer. I'm like, yay, I really wasn't expecting that. But it was great news because we found it early. I got to be operated on Macquarie University Hospital here in Sydney, and thankfully, touch wood, as things stand, making a good recovery. And then the second part of my year was whilst I was in recovery, actually recovering at home, my sister, who you can see there, that's my elder sister Trudy with her 2 boys, Alfie in the blue Man United shirt and Charlie in the red Man United shirt, who followed their uncle's dreams of playing for Man United. Trudy had been suffering for 6 years with breast cancer, which had spread throughout her body. And sadly, in May this year, she passed away. Now, fortunately for me, I managed to get a government exemption. I managed to get on one of the few flights out of Sydney, and I managed to spend her last 2 weeks on this planet with her and her boys and helping out, and then returned to Sydney recently. And so I can't begin to empathize with anything that you lot are going through. Everyone's going through something different, but the experience I've had in 2020 is one that's reminded me that life is bloody short, and I'm going to make the most to enjoy whatever time I have here and have a positive impact on the people I can. So certainly from me, not only is it a privilege to share with people like you anyway, because I think you're all amazing, but given the year I've had, I feel especially privileged to be able to share some of my journey and my experience. So finally, when I think about the future of work and I think about the huge opportunity and the huge potential that you lot have, I often get asked the question like, what's next? Like, how do we get there? You've got it. Like, you so have got this. Like, the minute you acknowledge that you're a role model, that you're going to be inspirational and impactful to the people around you, and that your potential is unbounded. There is so much you can achieve. The minute you realize that and focus your energy on that and experimenting and getting shit wrong and not apologizing for it, going, I got something wrong. Here's what I learned. I'm going to go again. I'm going to go again. The minute you realize you have that resilience, you will deliver an impact in this world, in this society, to the people around you that you could never have imagined. So thank you for your time in letting me speak and share with you. And now we get to have a really fun conversation where Catherine gets to grill me, hopefully with some of the complex, gnarly, tricky questions you've sent my way.
Thanks, Tom. I'll try and live up to that hype, but we'll see. I just want to start by thanking you for your insights, and particularly for feeling like you could share your personal cancer story with us. I think at Canteen we like to think that no one quite gets it like other people who have had a cancer journey, and so thank you for feeling like you could share that tonight. I guess I do have a few questions, some pre-prepared, some kind of spontaneously thought of as you were going through your talk. Your 3/5 points were very interesting. And I just kind of wanted to start by flipping around the idea of leadership. And I'd be interested to hear what you consider to be kind of the antithesis or the polar opposite of leadership in today's world.
That's a tough question, but a great question. I'd say passengers. And the reason I say that is sometimes people go, there's a lot of talk about managers versus leaders, or like a whole of like semi-intelligent arguments about that. And I'm like, no, leadership is about realizing, it's realizing that the future is not written, it's not predetermined, and it's not waiting for us, right? The future's not, it's not there, right? The future is created by all of us every single day, by our actions and our inactions. Leadership is about action. It's not about getting it right, it's about action. Therefore, the opposite of that is inaction. It's saying, what will be, I'm a passenger, I'm gonna let things happen to me, it's not fair. And there's lots of things in life that are not fair, right? It's not about just being happy all the time. It's about going, whatever happens to me or happens around me, I'm gonna take ownership for my actions, some of which will go really well and some of which won't, but I own me, right? And when you realize that, your role goes from victim or from passenger to going, no, I'm the driver of this. It doesn't mean we ever get exactly where we want to go, right? I think the great thing about dreams is at some point you accept that they're dreams, right? And I have dreams about a huge amount of stuff that I want to do that maybe I can't, right? And you're like, that's okay. That doesn't mean I should stop dreaming, because as a leader, you need to be able to dream and be big and bold and ambitious, but also accept that you probably won't get there, but you'll learn a shed load along the way. And so for me, leadership is about experimenting and growing and learning, not about being superhuman or right all the time. And so I think for leaders at any stage of their journey, at any stage of their growth, it's about going, leadership can feel lonely, but it's only lonely if you make it. And it can feel daunting if you try and be a superhero. But if you just accept that it's an experiment, like life's just one big experiment, and the more experiments that run, the better you get, then it's easy, right? So leadership's not status, it's not hierarchy, it's just you saying, I'm going to lead through this situation right now. all right, or I'm gonna apply some level of leadership to that, and then having the right mix of reflection and action. I think there's a huge amount we can learn from every experience we have, whether that experience be good, bad, or indifferent. But the challenge is sometimes those experiences become anchors and they stop us. And this isn't about not being grounded. I think most experiences will ground you in some way, but just don't let that become an anchor, right? Let it become a grounded experience. You go, right, I'm going to go again. I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to tweak it. I'm going to engage with someone else. I'm going to take a friend along on a journey, or connect with someone else who's going through a similar struggle and say, let's do this together. 2 brains are better than 1. 3 brains are better than 2. Like, just keep on challenging yourself, because the more we try this stuff, the better we get at it. But there's not perfect answers out there.
No, I think that's really interesting point you make, and I probably should thank you, because your answer in some ways led into my next question, which was about reflective practice and the idea of kind of taking that time as a leader to think about where you have gone and where you have been and where you are headed. And to that end, I actually really liked your discussion about the 4 L's, and kind of, I can see how I could implement, quite a simple exercise, but really effective exercise in my own leadership. I guess one thing that did make me think about was, like I'm sure many people, I know as a leader, I can be hypercritical of myself at times, and even sometimes feel a bit like an imposter if I'm in particular situations. So I guess to you, I was going to ask, can you think of a time where you've had to overcome your own personal insecurities in order to kind of be the leader that you can be, but sometimes your own kind of mind and brain can hold you back?
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 answers to that. One is, I used to have a mentor who every now and then would just grab me and say, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? And I'm like, yeah, but she's like, no, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? And often I would explain the worst thing, and she's like, cool, how likely is that? I'm like, okay, highly unlikely, but you never know. And so I was imagining worst case or filling in the gaps in a negative way, when often the reality was I was only going to know by trying. That as a philosophy kind of makes sense. Doesn't always help. People tend to nod, but it doesn't really help. Where this normally manifests is decision making, right? So normally imposter syndrome or doubt comes in when you've got to make a decision and you're like, what if I get it wrong, right? The fear of getting it wrong is almost higher than the anticipation of getting it right. I've borrowed a model from our wonderful friends at Amazon. They have this model called one-way door and two-way door. So their argument is that if you're making a one-way door decision, that's a decision that when you go through that door, there's no coming back. That's the decision that you measure twice, to cut once, that you analyze, you consult, you get people to help, you really, really get into the detail, because you want to be really, really confident that you're going to get it right. And about 0.5% of decisions in any given week, month, or lifetime are one-way doors. Every other decision is a two-way door. And the way a two-way door works is you can walk through the door to find out what's the other side. So if you're a leader, you want to try something, you can walk through the door. The question is, if it doesn't work, you can walk back through the door, but you pay a toll. There's the cost for coming back through the door. So the question you should ask yourself is it worth the toll? Should I analyze this side, or should I just go, you know what, sod it? Like, the worst thing that could go wrong is actually nothing. So I'm going to plow through the door, give it a good try. If it works, I'll stay that side of the door. If not, I'll just come back through. I'll pay the dollar toll. It's fine, right? The dollar for me is normally, I might run late, or I might look silly, or I might look like, who cares? I mean, it's the way I learn. I plow through lots of two-way doors. And what happens is, as you start walking through these two-way doors and occasionally going back through them, it becomes a muscle that you build of just taking ownership for decision-making, ownership for your own actions, and ownership for your own mistakes. And it's a completely different mindset. The momentum you build in that is like actually quite buoyant. So you start plowing through doors, and that's when you get this kind of momentum, right? And it's very, very satisfying. So I would just say, like, understand what the consequences are. Like, don't be a maverick, but understand like what the consequences are, but don't let those stop you. Let those be considerations that make you still build momentum.
Thanks for that. I have one more question, but I think before I go to that one, I might throw over to Simon. I can see that there's been a fair few questions coming through from our audience tonight. So we'll just hear from them for the next little bit.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Yeah, there's been a few questions come through, and the first one I'll run past you, Dom. So it comes to talking about conflicts among team members. So when you have really high performance individuals, how do you manage those people so you can get the most out of them, resolve any conflicts, help them achieve their potential?
Yeah, great question. Two ways. One is, I have a philosophy of always seek first to understand. And the reason is, I learned this the hard way. There was a team member on one of my teams when I first joined Atlassian, who I was ready to oust because they were coming in late, they weren't turning up for meetings, they were leaving early. I'm like, they're just no good. I mean, their work was all right, but I didn't like the way they turned up. And then finally someone said to me, maybe you should find out. Like they used to be amazing and now they don't seem as amazing. So I sat them down, I was like, hey, what's going on? They're like, situation with my partner and kids, and there's this whole story. I'm like, oh my God. Like I was about to oust you because you missed or turned up late for a few meetings. I had no idea what was going on. Well, the reason I didn't have any ideas because I hadn't bloody asked, right? Like my sort of mind reading technique is average at best. And so it's one of those things where you're like, before you think the worst of someone, walk in their shoes for a day, and not just their work shoes or leadership shoes, but just getting an understanding for what they're going through and then find the balance. Second part of that, we have an exercise that's actually in the playbook that we use called My User Manual. When we're bringing a team together for the first time, we ask all the team members to build their user manual. How do you communicate best? What are your working hours? What's your family situation? What are your no-goes or your best ways of acting? How do you like to turn up in meetings? What roles do you prefer? How do you like feedback? They're all the things that we think everyone else is the same as us. And it's only when we read out our user manuals, we're like, oh, right. So Catherine doesn't like feedback in the moment. Catherine wants feedback after the event with an example. But Simon, you want feedback in the moment, so I'll do it live in the meeting. Everyone has a different learning style, leadership style, feedback style. And the more you can understand those, you can build a cohesion as a team. Where you have conflict, I would say deal with it. I mean, it's not in a combative way, but to say, hey, here's the situation. Why do you think this is occurring? Like, give them a chance to remedy. A lot of times with conflict, we try and remove the person rather than understanding where that conflict is coming from. And for me, what I've had to learn is a lot of the conflict is people seeing the world through a different lens, and that's healthy. It might be uncomfortable for me, but it's helping for me to see their view.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much. So going back to your 4 L's, which I love, by the way, do you do them? So there's a question from Tilly. So do you do them all at once or one at a time throughout the day? Do you have specific prompts that ask, do you have specific prompts that you ask for yourself when you go through each of the L's?
Yeah, great question, Tilly. Thanks for that one. It's a funny one. When sometimes when I do the exercise, I'm so in my head, I can't do it properly. And so what I try and do is I try and find a time when I'm relaxed, when I'm clear, when I'm leveled or grounded. Could be after exercise. Sometimes I do it with a coffee. Sometimes I do it with a wine. It doesn't really matter. The biggest challenge is being honest with yourself. I try and do all 4 in one go in sequence. And then I challenge myself. I'm like, am I being honest? Because it's so easy to lie to yourself, right? To kind of play the game. And I'm like, am I being honest? Am I pushing hard enough? And I know that I know I've done that when I'm ready to share it with a friend. And so I do it every 90 days, kind of religiously, but it's not sort of set in stone because I have to be in the right mindset to do it.
Awesome. I might pass back over. Catherine, do you have another question you wanted to ask, or are you happy for me to continue?
Oh, I had one more question that I think it would be somewhat remiss not to kind of address the elephant in 2020, which is COVID. And obviously we're all very, very well aware of the many challenges that COVID has presented everyone across the world, but particularly young people. Obviously, we know that young people are disproportionately affected by the economic impact of the virus. So I guess I was interested to hear from you, Dom, about what advice you might have for the young people on the call who might be looking to negotiate entry into the workforce or set career goals during what is quite a turbulent time.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? I mean, I recently was listening to a Freakonomics podcast which shows the long-term impact of someone graduating into a time of recession, right? And you look at the history of recessions and people landing in those times, and it's very unfortunate, right? And I think this is going to be one of those examples. I think what that hides, though, is it hides the opportunity to seize the moment. If you look both the World Economic Forum, those skills I mentioned, but also the reality of practice, right? I think we can all sort of sit down and go, so COVID's a crisis. That's creating some kind of wartime leadership, which is required, but there's going to be a new normal that comes after it. What are the things that we believe will be true in that new normal, right? And what are the things that will change? And if you look at it, there's a whole lot of examples from the recent past where we can already see the changes occurring. Last year in the US, Jeff Bezos and Amazon put $1 billion aside to retrain 100,000 Amazon employees that they were going to disrupt through their own technology changes. Okay, so if you're looking at that, you're like, okay, here's all these jobs that actually, if you look last year, there were major employers, there were roles where you're like, there's hundreds of thousands of these roles, but they're also the ones most likely to be disrupted, shrinking. So you're like, cool, that's probably not a field to go into. In Australia, we had the example recently with Woolworths. They are rebuilding and redesigning 3 of their distribution centers and going so heavy on automation that they will displace thousands of workers within Woolworths. So they're already looking at how they will redistribute those employees to other roles, how they'll retrain them and reskill them. If you look at technology around artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation, it's taking away mundane, highly repeatable tasks. So what I would say to any young person, and I also say to old people who think they're in a job for life because they're about to get the shock of their lives, is find the things that make you uniquely human. Don't compete with a robot. You know, don't. If you think about the investment that Google, Amazon, and a whole of others are making in autonomous vehicles, in our lifetime, pretty soon there'll be a time when vehicles become autonomous. So if you have a desire to be a driver, unless it's a Formula One driver, if you have a desire to be a driver as a role, it's going to be highly disrupted. And so the flip of that is, what are the roles that aren't? It's where empathy, strong leadership, curiosity, creativity, healthcare is going to be grow massively. Education, which to be honest needs a complete revamp and fundamentally changed. I saw the question in there about education. It'd be remiss of me not to answer it. You know, the education system, unfortunately, that right now is flawed. You know, it teaches you that as a pupil, if you talk to another pupil, that's called cheating. You join the workforce, I call that collaboration. Right? You're taught about being tested, and I teach you to share and be vulnerable, right? And so the education system is not broken, but it's probably not perfect for the world that you're entering. And so what I would encourage is the P word, practice. Find places that you can practice this. It could be in sport, music, social teams, community. There are so many places to practice leadership skills and to hone those leadership skills. And the more you practice them, the better you become at them, the more employable you are in a variety of different roles. I think there's a danger for a lot of people, unless you want to be a dentist, a vet, or doctor, unless you want to be one of those, or maybe an architect, unless you want to be one of those things, everything else is kind of becoming generalist in its nature. And so what I'd say is, just like when I actually left university, I followed my parents' advice and I became a chartered accountant for 3 years. And I was awful at it and I really didn't enjoy it. I've gone on 4 or 5 evolutions since then, right? My career today, there's no resemblance to my career when I joined, you know, Deloitte in the year 2000. And I don't know what the next 20 years bring. I think I know what skills I might need to acquire, and I'm helping myself evolve and stay nimble, but I don't know what that role is, and I'm okay with that. And so what I'd say is, avoid taking long-term bets where you're like, I'm going to go and spend X number of years and X $1,000 learning something. I'm going to do it for 20 years. Because unless you're going to be a vet or a doctor, I don't think that's true. So be nimble with your learning, whether it be learning from people, from books, from certifications or formal education. I think we need all of them, but find a balance that works for you. It's different for everyone.
Thanks, Dom. Fortunately, I heard doctor mentioned, so the many years I put, the many years I put in should hopefully work out, but we'll wait and see. Are there any other questions, Simon, that you had?
Yeah, so there's a couple of vocational ones in there, and Dom, thanks very much. I was going to come back to the university one, so that's great. Thanks for addressing that, and also just like to say to the people on the call as well that Canteen has recently taken on and is offering a more vocational career service. So get in touch with us as well if you've got specific questions that you want to talk through on a one-to-one basis as well. We had a question there about imposter syndrome as well, which I think it was great how you, imposter complex, imposter syndrome, which I heard you refer to as the question came in another answer, which is great. And yeah, I also hope you don't mind if I give a shout out to you, to Mike Cannon-Brooks's talk on
good talk.
The imposter
syndrome. It's a really good talk, yeah. So actually, let me just talk to that very quickly, Simon. So Mike is one of our CEOs. You know, a lot of people talk about Mike as being worth X billion dollars, how's his family, Atlassian, but he readily admits still today that he suffers with imposter syndrome. He's waiting for the knock on the door to say that he's a fraud. Right now, he's not. He's super intelligent, amazingly successful, but each time you become more successful, all you see is the other opportunities. And so he uses imposter syndrome as a superpower to go, I need to become even better so that I don't get that knock on the door. It's bizarre because he is amazingly successful, and I keep on wanting to punch him and go, you want to just give yourself a break, mate, but it's just the way he's wired. And so I think we all suffer imposter syndrome to some extent. It's about harnessing the energy from that and using it for good rather than for evil.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's a TED talk as well, if anybody wants to Google that one. It's awesome. I'm just conscious of time. Have you got time for just another question, or do you have, is that cool? Thank you very much. So would you say leadership skills can be applied to working with clients in terms of being a role model or leader for them, e.g., if you're a counsellor or careers advisor, and are there any models you'd recommend for this?
Yeah, so the model I talked about, model I talked about before around seek first to understand. Yeah, seek first to understand is very, very powerful. The other one is the power of the question. You know, I do a lot of coaching, mentoring, and every now and then I'm guilty of getting a tendency of wanting to give advice. Very dangerous, because they're not asking me for advice. And even if they are, I can only give advice from my view of the world, which is not theirs. And so my job as a coach or a mentor is to ask questions and help them get there. The annoying thing about that is it takes a damn sight longer, and sometimes I get really impatient. The good news about that approach is when they get there, they got there for themselves, not for me. And so what I would say is the power of the question of saying, what does good look like? What does success look like? Who can help you? How can I help you? What do you need? Right? What would you need to stop to get there? These are all questions that are quite suggestive, but helps that person get to the position themselves. And so I commend anyone in those positions of counseling, certainly when dealing with delicate topics, but there's so many questions you can ask that can help navigate them. And in essence, what you do by asking a question is you lead them. You lead them to the answer instead of giving them the answer, right? Leadership is about getting them there, not giving them the answer you've already got.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you very much.
No worries. Well, and again, just Simon, thank you to you and to Catherine and all the team at Canteen for putting on these events. I think that they're awesome, and for giving me an hour and 3 minutes to share some of my wild and wonderful stories. If anyone wasn't comfortable asking questions in this forum, feel free to ping them through to Simon, and he'll message them to me, and I'll get answers to you. I know this kind of forum is not for everyone's style. So if you've got a question either burning now that you weren't comfortable asking, or at some point in the next few days, you're like, I wish I'd asked him this question, just ping them through and we'll get those answers to you.
Thanks, Dom. I think I speak on behalf of everyone when I say that I've really enjoyed the last hour and 3 minutes. So I'm really glad that you could make yourself available for us tonight and sharing some of your insights. I know as one of Canteen's young leaders and someone in the early stages of their professional career, it really has given me a lot to think about. Probably one of the things that I really enjoyed of the many, many things that I enjoyed of what you said was the phrase, knowledge isn't power, but it's what you do with it. And I think that is applicable to so many aspects of life and business. So yeah, something to kind of ponder going forward. We do have a little gift in the mail for you. So hopefully that will arrive sometime soon.
Thank you.
And I do believe that it may have something to do with Canteen's signature bandana, which I am
Brilliant.
repping as part of my professional but CEO in sneaker style look tonight. I just want to quickly pass back to Simon, who's going to tie everything up and close this evening, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Catherine. And yeah, big thanks, Dom, for coming in and spending this time with us today, and also for your openness in sharing your own personal stories as well. It's something that we've all taken a lot from today. I know I certainly have, and it touched me as well, so thank you. And those L's gold, so I will commit to them, and that is actual commitment because my boss is on this call and his boss too, so we'll lock that in. But yeah, honestly, thanks very much, Dom, for coming in today and for sharing everything. And yeah, we also, on behalf of everyone, the young people and everyone at Canteen, thanks so much. And yeah, we really wanted a really good one to kick off the Leadership Festival with, and we certainly got it. So thank you very much indeed. And thanks, Catherine, too, for being an awesome MC. Some great questions for Dom and for taking the time away from your A&E work in Warwick Hospital. So I hope that there's someone upstairs looking after the A&E for you at the moment, because I'm sure it's busy times. But yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, Dom, if there's anything we can do, feel free to reach out anytime. On behalf of everyone, thank you very much. And this year brings us to the conclusion of today's event. So young people on the call, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry that I didn't get to every question. We will, as Dom said, make sure that we get those questions through, and I'll get back to you with responses. And as I said, we have those career services available now, so get in touch with us there as well. So enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. Thanks again, Dom, so much. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. So thanks very much. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Tom.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.